Welcome, fellow Biafrans, lovers of freedom across the world. I welcome you to this platform. Thank you so much for joining us on this program, wherever you are joining from. If you have not yet subscribed to this channel, please kindly subscribe to this very channel. Click the notification bell so that you'll be notified each time we upload a video. Like and share to family and friends. Share to all platforms. Share to everyone that is close to you. Remember, we have a responsibility to carry the message of Biafra to everyone in the world, more especially to educate Biafran people wherever they are, for them to know the right thing to do at the right time. This platform where you are watching this program is Biafra Exodus Hard Talk TV, a platform where we bring information that are coming from the Prime Minister, Mazi Simon Egba. We bring information that has to do with the Republic government in exile, Biafra Republic government in exile. We bring information on the restoration of the Biafra. In this platform, we say things the way they are. We bring it to your doorstep for you to understand and know where we are. Fellow Biafrans that are watching wherever you are watching from,
that has a clearly unique perspective about the fate and the future of this country. I'd like to welcome back to Inside Sources, Mr. Dele Farotimi. Mr. Dele, you are welcome to Inside Sources.
Thank you very much, Agbolaolu. It's a pleasure to be with you.
And, Mr. Farotimi doesn't need a lot of introduction, but I was joking with him that you can actually introduce him as a retired lawyer,
Oh, yeah. You'll be very correct to say that.
All right. So I want to start this conversation around the question of judicial reform and judicial ethics. Now, I think many Nigerians, especially people in the legal profession, and many of us who are also involved in public life, we have a clear understanding that there has to be quite a bit of reform generally in our society, but especially in the judiciary. So I want to start for your own perspective. You have practiced law certainly for more than 2 decades before you opted, I guess, to be a private citizen doing something else. What are the major reforms that you think ought to take place in our judiciary?
Well, we are as a people quite fond of doing what Yorubas would call amanfie tesile palapalapa. We ignore the leprosy and embark on ringworm curing exercises. It is not arguable that the Nigerian judiciary is in serious need, very urgent need of a turnaround. But when you look at it almost like it is only our judiciary, and by curing that problem, we would have resolved each and every one of our problems, it would be rather simplistic for anyone to make such pronouncements. But it is critical that the foundation of any state, which is the rule of law, must be strengthened by ensuring that fit and proper persons are the ones to be found in the judicial system. That would, of course, demand that the entire process of appointment and selection of judicial officers must be revisited. It cannot continue to be a place for prebendal expression of power and largesse. It cannot be a place where, because you are the CJ, your sons and daughter-in-laws, cousins, uncle, goats, qualified or not qualified, all of a sudden becomes qualified for judicial appointment. It cannot be a place that where you reward people who have been loyal to you, regardless of whether their loyalty is backed by patriotism to the country itself. It cannot just be a reward for the good old boys and girls who have served the system, which is what it has essentially been reduced to. And when you look at the end product, which should be the dispensation of justice, and you see that there is little or no justice available to anyone within the country, not even the rich and mighty and powerful any longer, because what you now find are cacophonies of noises issuing forth from different courts, sometimes of coordinate jurisdiction saying different things. Look at the Kano situation, for instance. It says a lot about what has happened to us. When is a poor man who is in need of urgent judicial relief, you won't hear a thing. Nobody is offering anything. He might be there for the next 5 years without his case ever seeing the light of day. But look at how many injunctions fly all over the place. One is the high and mighty, the powerful and the rich that are involved, even when it's their petty squabbles. But so when we're talking about judicial reform, we must understand clearly that the judiciary is but one out of the many aspects of our country that has more or less collapsed. It's only reflective of everything else. It's reflective of our educational system. It's reflective of everything about our country has come to the critical point where we must look at it honestly and stop lying to ourselves about giant of Africa and all the many lies that we tell ourselves to cover the truth of the destruction, wanton destruction of our country by those who have claimed to rule it. So, yes, we need urgent judicial reforms, but it goes beyond just looking at the judiciary. It's easier to despair when we look at our case, but yes, the judiciary needs urgent reform. It's not just about the human resource, even structural. There are urgent needs for serious structural reform in the judiciary. There is need to fund it properly. There is need to be deliberate about dispensing justice and not just appearing to be paying lip service to. How do you explain the way it is? Look at the number of people awaiting trials in our courts, and we claim to have a judicial system. It's a disgrace.
So I wanted to also, in breaking it down, I see two issues essentially, when we're talking about judicial reforms. Of course, we're looking at the rules, what the regulations are, the laws, as it were. Are there some of them that needed to change, And then there's also the issue of ethics, which is how those laws, those regulations, those rules are applied, misapplied, used, or abused. So I wanted to ask you, Bradley, in your own view, which is the more compelling problem of the judiciary? Is it about the rules that needs to change, the regulations, or the ethical question?
Look, Yorubas will say, "Onlamukun ẹ̀rù ẹ wọ́, olórí lẹ̀ ń wò ẹ wò sàlẹ̀." So you say to the crippled man with the load on his head, "Oh, your load is lopsided." And he responds, "You will call it lopsided because you're focused on the load on my head without looking at the crookedness of my feet." Let's be clear about something. There are sufficient rules in our books that should have stopped the retired Chief Justice of Nigeria from appointing members of his families as judicial officers. The Judicial Code of Conduct was sufficient, and you wouldn't ever have heard of any such thing before Nigeria began its speedy descent into the abyss of impunity. So when you hear me saying that corruption is not our problem in Nigeria, it is impunity, I will link it to the issue of whether it's about ethics or whether it's about a paucity of laws. We have enough laws in our books. We have enough rules in our books that should prevent the egregious abuses that we see on a daily basis that has debased our judicial system and rendered it completely unfit for purpose. There are more than enough laws and rules. So this is not about the paucity of written guidance on what should be done or not done by persons within the system. It is about a complete disregard for law. We don't even pretend that the laws matter any longer. Corruption is when the system says something should be done in a particular order or form, and then somebody is giving undue pecuniary benefit, and they then circumvent the system by speeding it up or doing something, maybe qualifying somebody who shouldn't qualify. That is corruption. But when you see a situation where people simply walk to the answer without caring anything for the process, that is what has happened to us. The same way they do wuru to the answer in answering university exam questions, promoting people within the system. It is the same thing they are doing in the judiciary. So even in judicial pronouncements now, you now see ever more ridiculous, obscene, and silly pronouncements issuing forth because there are simply no longer any regard have or had to common sense, what should be. Look, we have departed from the path of sense. That is why you have so many abominations flying up and down the place. It's about who has the power. Once they have the power, they don't care about consequence. They care nothing about it. So this is no longer, our case has moved beyond whether if we were talking about ethics, who is going to enforce the ethics? Who will enforce it? In the absence of a societal decision to walk away from this ruinous path that we all appear to have embraced as a collective. Because you would imagine that if the judiciary went mad like ours appear to have gone crazy, then maybe the religious orders, whether that be Muslim or Christian, would even have something to say to speak to the complete absence of justice, manifest and complete absence of justice from our system. But which one of them have you heard saying anything? Who has said a word? So it's not just about the judiciary. It's just that it is easier to point at the judiciary because if you heard the rumbling of thunder, it's easy for you to say rain is coming. So when what should be the last hope of the common man has become as hopeless as our own judiciary has obviously become, then it becomes alarming and we start talking about the judiciary. But which part of our lives as Nigerians really in truth encourages any hope? We all need to actually look at ourselves and tell ourselves the truth that what we have done to ourselves, our children, is not sustainable. We've destroyed this country, and if we don't call ourselves back, it will be beyond redemption very soon. I'm a lawyer. I was trained as one. I would even go as far as to sometimes argue that perhaps I was born one. But here is the thing. Even me, I have cases in the system. I went to court knowing I won't get justice. Just for the record, just so that people will not say, what did you do about it? That's how hopeless our judiciary has become. Only the rich can get any vestige of justice within the system. Only the rich and the powerful. The judicial system has become a tool for the oppression of the weak. People went out to protest. I'm sorry, I need to make this point. People went out to protest against hunger. They went out to protest against hunger. You had somebody like Wike, governments all over the place, even the ones in Lagos State, they rushed all over the place, went to the court, to go and get injunction against people looking to protest. They used the judiciary to handcuff citizens, quote and unquote, who presume to demand the right to peaceful protest. The judiciary they used judges to issue pronouncements. To make the matter worse, the state went ahead and charged peaceful protesters for treason. Treason. You want to criminalize the right of protest? Treason. Hungry people came out. You are selling them daily and you are criminalizing protest. And the judiciary has become complicit in the oppression and suppression of the Nigerian people. So if the people lose hope in the judiciary as they have, I have lost hope completely in the judiciary. That's the honest to God truth. If the people lose hope in the judiciary, what is left?
Clearly, there are quite a few people who share those sentiments. You know, we have seen instances of very troubling decisions, and and I'm sure that there are even deeper issues that most people don't know about. But before we get too deep into it, we had on this show Chief Kanu Agabi, two-time Attorney General of the Federation, and we were talking about, the judiciary. And his argument was that, look, the judges have been overworked.
Has been
and he said that whatever it is that we see
the time of
in the
independence till
judiciary
date,
is because
from the time of
the
civil war
judges have
till
been
date.
overworked.
And
He
in
gave an
trying
example and
to
said that, look, there are
address
judges
issues
who
like
have
this
to deal with as
requires
much
more
as
than
20
just a
or
condemnation.
30
It requires a dialogue,
cases in one
because a lot
day.
of their leaders actually have not been happy
He even
at the
said
way
that,
things
look, he
have
has
been.
worked in the
This has been
executive as
years,
Attorney General,
not
he
just
has
10
worked
years,
in the
20 years,
legislature
30,
as a senator,
but this is about
and
50
being
years
a
or
lawyer,
more.
he has worked in the
And they
judiciary.
have excluded from a lot of things. The young persons are
is
suffering.
still the best.
And also, if you
Now,
look at the
the
way
reason
and
why
manner
I
that
brought that
the
one
army
up,
or the military have handled
is to say that
interventions in
certainly
Southeast,
you too must
it has
think
not been
that
similar
there
to the
are
way they have
still
handled issues
some
with
good
even
judges
Boko Haram.
that are working
There
in
have
what
been
you
a lot of
believe to be
killings,
a bad
be the
system.
military killing young persons
How
and
do you respond to that?
referring to them
Let
as
me put
IPOP
it this
leaders.
way.
No law permits killing
Every
of citizens.
system
So it's
is
not
made up
because
of
maybe other
persons.
persons are torturing people that it becomes a
So
crime.
every
And when the military
system
tortures
is
people,
only
it's
as
allowed.
strong or
That
as
is not
weak
so.
as
Administration
the
of Criminal Justice
persons who make up the system.
Anti-Torture Act of 2017
If you have
actually
100
prohibits all forms of
judges
torture.
and you
Even
can
in times
only
of war, torture
point
is
at
being
perhaps
prohibited.
maybe 5,
So, but
maybe
this,
10,
when you come to
or
Nigeria,
even if
these
you are
things have been
generous, let's say
happening
50
over and
out of
over
the
again. We
100.
cannot count the number of
And that's
persons that have
being
been murdered by the military in
overgenerous.
Southeast.
Let's say 50
So
out of
certainly
the
when this
100
thing
can be
continue
said to
happening
be
and
above
reoccurring,
and capable
certainly
of
the people
dispensing
at one
justice.
time or the other
Let's
may
be
also
clear.
get tired of
Corruption
being
is not
abused,
only
and they may
about
start to
collecting
find
money
ways to
pervert
actually
justice
retaliate in
within the
one form
system.
or manner.
Corruption is
So for
making up
me,
your
I'm saying that
mind
this has
about
happened
the
a
case
lot of
before you
years.
even
A lot of
get
their leaders,
the
Southeast
matter
leaders
because
have
of your own
complained,
prejudices.
and traditional religions
So
and all that have
when you
complaints
have a
over
situation
time.
where
But the
a
federal
fair
government
amount,
have
even
not
if it's 10 out of
actually
100
tried to
that
actually
are
address
corrupt
this concern.
within
Most
a
times it has
judicial
just been
system,
army
that's
intervention
bad
in those
enough.
areas.
But
And
our
when
judiciary is not
you
any different from
overlook a
our
lot of
police, or our customs,
dialogue,
or our
a lot
clergy, or our teachers, or our mechanics, or our doctors for that matter, they are us. So when we start talking about our judges, and yeah, there are good ones amongst them, I've had occasion, I've been at the mercy of this same judiciary that I speak about all the time. I had a case where I was pursued through the court. I was convicted at the High Court. It took the mercies of the Court of Appeal justices who reviewed the appeal to quash my conviction. So it's not as if I'm speaking to a place where I am an angel and everybody are devils or demons. No, it's about the system that we have built. Even when good judges are within the system, the administrative judges will not give them cases that involves persons of power where they know that the judge would not do their bidding. These are things that lawyers know. There was once upon a time in this Lagos state when a particular person was in power as governor in Lagos state, when you sued Lagos state, and that is the practice until today, if you sue a Lagos state agency or you sue the Lagos state government, you'll be collecting dates when the judges knew they would not even be sitting. So you might have a case in court for the next 5 years. Every time you went to court, you are going to get an adjournment because you are suing the parties that may not be sued. That's the kind of system that we have evolved. We've evolved. The best that our judicial system can deliver the way it is currently is maybe the administration of impunity. So you just take care of those that must not be touched, and at best give the semblance of justice to the victims of the system. But we've not evolved a judicial system that is truly capable of upholding the rule of law, dealing with everybody as equals, and truly being blind as the goddess of justice is meant to be, holding a just scale and a sword that would do justice as between the parties that are before it, until our country is structured to deliver justice, until the judges themselves are related to the people to whom they are meant to be dispensing justice, until each and every one of us understand the fact that the more we weaken the fabric of the society by making all these exceptions for persons that have rendered the system incapable of dispensing justice to all, our system is bound to grind to a halt one day, the way we are going.
Quite sad. All right. I mean, so I have read a book that you, I think you must have written this book quite recently. Is the Nigeria and its criminal justice system. And you know what really struck me about the book was the case that you narrated, whereby there was a land matter in I think it's Lekki, Osapa area, where, according to your book, the matter got to the Supreme Court. I think it was a case that involved some of the families. I think there was a contest about, a particular portion of land. And the matter got to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court made a ruling that gave judgment to the Eletu Badamosi family, 10 acres, if I got the number right. And then, as you reported in the book, that their lawyer went back to the Supreme Court and got the Supreme Court to increase the allocation of the hectares after the Supreme Court itself had said, look, this family, all you get here is 10 acres. And then, so I mean, something happened, they weren't satisfied, went back, and the Supreme Court, in your book that you reported, gave the family almost or close to 250 acres. Now, Mr. Dede, can you just summarize to us what happened in that case for the benefit of our viewers, before we now try and, because I think this is something that we should look closely at. Can you give us a summary what happened in that case?
I thank God for the grace of life that I managed to write the book, that I'm alive to defend the truth, which requires no defense, that each and every one of the persons that I mentioned in the book are alive and well and able to deny what I have written concerning what transpired. But in order to answer your question, I'm giving this background so that I need people to understand very clearly that I'm not about persons. I don't really care much for persons. We're all bit part players. However high or low, we'll spend our time here and then we'll go. But we would all render account for whatever we do with our life. So here is the thing. When I was much younger in practice, my first law office worked for the Ojomu family. They were more or less exclusively the lawyers for the Ojomu chieftaincy family. So I grew up in practice within that space, and I was fortunate to have, how when you are in a space, you hear different things. So I'd heard about the case involving the Ojomus and the Eletus since my very early years in practice. That case was at the time freshly decided at the High Court, and then it later moved on to the Court of Appeal, and it spent quite a while there, but eventually it came out, and the Court of Appeal still gave victory to the Ojomus. But I kept following these over the course of time, but because I live in the neighborhood as well as practice in that neighborhood as well. So I knew from way back that some people named the Eletu family and Badamosi Eletu had purchased land from the Ojomu family. And I knew that there had been that grievance about some fraudulence in relation to the deed. So by the time my clients were purchasing things in that neighborhood and they were asking questions about what kind of legal risks they might be running, I was careful to explain to them, because I have studied the case from very early in my practice, that, well, the totality of argument was restricted, obviously, to a very small part. So I gave legal advice based on my knowledge, not just of the law, but of the facts.